Welcome everyone to the video series Learn C Sharp. Today is the fourth video in the series. We will be learning today variables, how to use variables in Visual Studio 2013, and we will be creating a calorie counter app that will demonstrate how we use variables in an actual real application. So what we've done so far in this series, video 1, we've downloaded Visual Studio from MSDN. Video 2, we actually installed Visual Studio. And in video 3, we explored the Visual Studio IDE or Integrated Development Environment. If you would like to go back and review any of those videos, you can follow the link. This PowerPoint also will be available on my website. So what are we going to do in this video? In this video, we're going to discuss variables. We're going to look at the two different kinds of variables, value and reference types. We're going to look at declaring some variables. We're going to look at converting some variables. And then once we're done with some of this theory, we're going to actually create a real-world application that will serve as a calorie counter. And this is the application that as the video series progresses, we're going to use this same application and add to it and add all kinds of bells and whistles until in the very end we have a fully functional working application that we can actually use. So just a little more detail on the calorie counter application. It's going to take input from a user, and that input is going to be the name of the food they ate. It's going to be the calories for that food, and then it's going to output the day and time that they made the entry. It's going to display the food and the calorie for the food, and then it's going to calculate the total amount of calories for a given day. So before we get into this application, let's discuss some theory about variables. So if you go out to my website, you'll see here that you can download the PowerPoint, and this is going to give some, to give you some more information on variables. So let's go through this theory, and once we get through this theory, we'll actually start Visual Studio and start some programming. So the first question, what is a variable? A variable is simply just a placeholder for an item that you're going to use in your code. It's very simple. You would give that variable a name, and you would tell C# what kind of variable it is. So you would give it a type. If you look here, the Microsoft definition for a variable, let me zoom this in a little bit here so we can see it a little closer. Okay, so Microsoft definition of a variable is variables represent storage location. Every variable has a type that determines what values can be stored in the variable. So that's a more technical description of a variable. There's two types of variables. You have a value type and a reference type. Basically, a value type will hold its value directly. A reference type will hold a reference or pointer to the actual object that contains the data that we're looking for. So as we program more, we'll see this more and more, and we'll be able to discuss this and get more specific with it. For now, these are just items that I would like you to be aware of so that you know what they are if they do come up, or if you're researching, you see these come up. So just a general, just for your information for now. We'll dig deeper into this. Declaring variables in C#. If you have an integer, you want to use a number. You see here integer, my integer. Same thing with date time. Now date time is a reference variable. So you see here we have to use the new keyword, and we have to assign it an actual date time. So we'll get into this in detail as we go through the Visual Studio aspect of this tutorial. Then on the website, it talks about variable conversions. Here we have an integer. We want to move that integer to a string. And then here's another example. Then also here are some references. So if you click MSDN variable basics, you'll see that you'll get some in detail information on variables. So I'm not going to go through this, but if you do research, you do want to come out here and take a look at some of this information. So now let's get into some code. I'm going to start Visual Studio. And I'm going to create a new project. And I'm going to start with a console application. And I'm going to name this console application Calorie Counter. I'm going to say OK here to create this application. And you'll see that Visual Studio has created an application. It's a console application. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run this application to show you what a console application is. Most of you are familiar with this, but when we run this, it's just going to give us a black box that is a console application. So in order for us to actually see the black box, I have to put a pause here in the application so that it will stop and we could read or we could see the GUI, the application. So I'm going to write here console dot read line. And you see it says here what this will do. This reads the next line of characters from the standard input stream. In other words, this is going to stop the console so that we can actually view it. And I'll put some comments here. Stop the console. And so I want to run this application now. So we haven't done anything to it. We've just added a piece of code here that's going to stop the application from exiting. So here I'll hit start, and this will actually start the application in debug mode for any CPU. So let me hit start. And as you'll see, this is a console application, black screen, cursor. So here we could type at this cursor. And once we hit enter, the application is going to perform the line of code that we entered. It's going to read the line, and then it's going to exit the application. So let me hit enter here. And as you see, the application is gone. So what we want to do is we want to create an application that will allow the user to enter information about calories that they've eaten throughout the day and the number, the count of the calories. And we want the application to add those up and show a nice output. So really the first thing we want to do is we want to show the user something when the application first starts. So let's start by declaring a variable. This variable is going to be a string. Now a string, as it says here, just represents text as a series of Unicode characters. So basically a string is just words. It's just words and characters that you put together. So let's say string, and let's say welcome message. And let's click off here. Actually, let me zoom into this so you guys can see this a little bit better. Okay, so there we go. So right now we've declared a variable, we've given it a type of string, and we've given it a name. So when you declare variables in C# and Visual Studio, you have to give it a type, which in our case this is string. You have to give it a name. Now this name for the most part can be anything you want. There are some restrictions, but we won't go over those now. For the most part, you can name the variable pretty much what you want. So in our case, we have string welcome message. Now, if you see here, there's this green squiggly line underneath welcome message. Now, this is a nice feature that Visual Studio gives us. As you write code, if something is not right, if something is wrong, or if it's simply a warning, in this case, green is a warning, the compiler will tell us, give us this little green squiggly line, and it's going to tell us that this variable, as we hover, it says the variable was declared but never used. So in other words, we told the compiler, look, we want a variable and we want to call it welcome message, but nowhere in our code are we using this variable. So the compiler just gives us a nice warning message telling us that. Now, if it was an error that would not compile, if we were to build this program and the compiler couldn't build it, it would give us a red line here saying that you must fix this. A green squiggly line is a nice message saying, it's a warning. A red squiggly line is something that you have to fix before you can actually try to run your code. Okay, so we have welcome message. So let's assign something to this variable. Let's give this welcome message. Let's place something inside this variable. So to do that, let's go up here. We're going to say we declared this variable. Declare variable. And just to mention here, these what I'm doing here, these are comments. When you start with a backward slash and backward slash, that's going to tell the compiler to ignore whatever code is here. So these are comments that we write in code, and this is more for programmers to understand, what the code is doing, and just to give another programmer who's going to read your code, just to give them hints or advice or information on your code. So here we declare the variable welcome message. Now we're going to assign this variable value. So let's say welcome message equals calorie counter application. And when you want to terminate a line of code, you have to place a semicolon at the end. This pretty much tells the compiler that this is, that's your statement. This is the end of your statement. So that's why we add this little semicolon here. So we've declared a variable welcome message of type string, and here we've assigned welcome message and we've assigned it to calorie counter. Now our next step is we want to show this message on the actual console. Okay, so that's going to be our next step. So what we're going to do here is we're going to display this in the console. Now in order to do that, we're going to use that same class, the console class, which if you read here, it says represents the standard input, output, and error streams for console applications. So this is pretty much what we call a class that allows us to manipulate the black screen or the console. So let's type this here. Let's say console dot, and what you'll see here is that all these are methods and properties and basically things that we can do with this console object. So in our case, we want to write to the screen. So if I press W, IntelliSense will go to W's, and if you see here, there's a write function, there's a write line function, and we want to use write line. Now what the write does, it just writes a line to the screen and doesn't go to the next line. If we do a write line, it'll write the screen and hit an enter and go to the next line. So let's do write line, and we want to write out our message. So we're going to plop in our variable in here. And if you see here, it gives you, there's 19 different ways you can use this write line, or overloads as they're called. So what we're going to do is we're going to give it let's see here, we're going to give it a string value. So we declared a string up here, and that's what we're going to put inside these parentheses. So let's say welcome message, and let's terminate our line. So you see what we've done here is we've declared a string, welcome message, we've assigned a value to this string, and then we're displaying this string on the screen. So let's run this and let's see if this application is going to display a nice friendly menu for our user, or a nice friendly title for our user. So let's start. And you'll see what we have here. It's taken our variable calorie counter application and it's displayed it on the console, console.writeLine, and you see here that it's displayed it. So that means that this has worked the way it should. So let me close this. So we have a message here, and the next thing we want to do is we want to get input from the user. And some of the things we want to input is we want to get the name of the food that they want to track. We want to get the calories that this food takes, the calories for the food. So let's declare some more variables here. And actually, after we display this message, I'm going to just add a nice dotted line after that. So it kind of looks like a menu or a title. So I'm going to say write line, and we can declare a variable like this and pop it in here, or we could just literally type a string inside here. So let me type a string here. Let me do some dashes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay. So what this is going to do is it's going to write calorie counter application and just kind of give us a line here so that it looks like a title and a line. So let me run this and we can see what this does. As you can see, give us calorie counter application and it gives us a line here. Now I'm going to want to move this out a little bit so it looks a little better. So I'm going to hit enter. And let's put a few more here so that we have so it looks a little better. So let's run the application. And you'll see here that it gave us calorie counter application and we have a line here. So our next step in this application is we want to get information from the user. So the way that we do that is let's declare some more variables, and our first variable is going to be food. So let's name it, it's going to be a string type, and let's name it food. And this is going to be the food that the user is giving us. Okay, and let's say we're going to declare another stripe because we need to know the calories for that food. So we have two variables here. We have one called food and one called calories. So now what we want to do is we want to ask the user. So we show them a nice message, calorie counter application. We have a line here. We want to now ask the user what the name of the food is that they want to record. So here we get into some input. Input, ask user for food. Okay, so let's say console.readLine. It says reads the next line of characters from the standard input stream. So what we're going to use this, and what we're going to want to do is we're going to first we want to prompt the user to enter. We want to tell them enter food, enter the food that you want to record. So we have to actually write to the console that message. So let's say console.writeLine, and let's say enter the food you want to record. Okay, so what this is going to do is we're going to send our message here, and then we're going to ask our user, enter the food that you want to record. And so this here is going to read the next line. So we're going to say that our food is going to equal whatever they type next. So we're assigning food, our string here food, to console.readLine. And if you look here, you'll see that readLine actually returns something. It returns a string. So if we assign food to this value, console.readLine, it's going to return whatever the user enters after this line here. So let's run this and let's see what we get. Let's start, and you'll see here we have enter the food you want to record. Now, I don't like this because as you see the cursor is down here, so the user is going to enter some food and they're going to hit enter. What I would prefer is that this line be here. So instead of console write line, if we just do console.write, it's not going to put an enter behind that entry. So let's give that a try. Let's remove line. Let's just do console.write. And then we'll say food equals console.readLine. So let's give this a try here. And what you see is that the cursor now is on the line where the entry is made. So let's say I had a banana. I'm going to hit enter. And then the application will finish. One thing I don't like is that I would like a space here. So there's a little space between where the person enters and the person types. So let me actually see what other methods we have here. Console dot read. What is console? Reads the next character from the standard input stream. Okay. Let's do read line and let's keep read line. And let's run this application. And you'll see here that enter the food you want to record. Let's say banana. Hit enter. And if I hit enter one more time, the application will end. What I want to verify is that at this point, I want to verify that we've recorded what the user has entered correctly. So what I'm going to do here is I'm gonna write out results. Okay, and what I'm going to write out is I'm going to write out what the user entered. So again, I'm going to say console.writeLine, and I'm going to say the user entered. Now here's where what we have to do is here is that we have a variable now that holds the value that the user entered, and that was banana. So banana, once we do this console.readLine, is going to be saved in this variable right here called food. So if we want to write this out, that we have to be able to combine this, which is what we want to display on the screen, and we want to combine that with whatever is in food. So in C#, there's an operator we use called the plus operator, and what this plus operator will do is it will concatenate or join two strings. So the user entered plus, and let's say food, which is the variable you see here is a local variable of string. So the user entered and food. So we're going to put a semicolon there. And so let's run this application. So we have the welcome message. We ask the user enter a food. Then we show the food that the user entered, and this is more validation. We just want to make sure that we captured the food correctly, and then we're going to hit another enter to exit the application. So let's run this application. And what you'll see here is, okay, we have calorie counter application, enter the food you want to record. So I'm going to say banana, and I'm going to hit enter. And as you see, we have the output that we defined. We have the output we defined right here on line 31, and it says and the user entered banana. So we've captured the input from the user correctly, and we've displayed it. User entered banana, we wrote out banana. So at this point, we have an application that will accept input from user, and that input is the food that they want to record, and that's banana. So I'm going to hit enter to exit this application. Okay, so the next step is we have the food that the user wants to enter. Now we want to collect the calories that the food is. So we have to insert another input here. So let me put some space here, and let's add another input. Input asks user for the calories. Now this is going to be the same way. We're going to write to the console and display the question to the user. So console.write, and we're going to say enter the calories for your entry. We're going to terminate this line with a semicolon. And then now we're going to assign our variable calories. We're going to assign this to what the user enters here. So let's say calories, and you see if I just start typing calories, IntelliSense will pop up anything local here. So I can just select calories here and hit tab, and it'll fill that entry in for me. So let's say calories equals console dot read line, and there we go. So at this point in the application, we display a welcome message. We ask the user to enter the food they want to record, and then we ask them how many calories was the food. And then we save that in the variable calories. So we have two variables, food and calories. So now just for validation, we're going to write this out to the screen to make sure that we've captured this correctly. So we'll say console dot write line, and we'll say the calories for your food is, and let's show calories. Okay, so now we're going to run this and we're going to see how this application performs. Okay, so here we go. Calorie counter application. Enter the food you want to record. I'm going to say I'm going to record a banana. Banana. Okay, I'm going to hit enter. And then the application is going to ask me how many calories was it for the banana. So I'm going to say it was 100 calories. Now I'm going to hit enter. So you'll see that the application tells us the user entered banana and the calories for your food is 100. So the application is reading the input correctly and it's displaying the output correctly. So let me hit enter to escape this, to get out of this program. Okay, so now we have a small application that's going to ask a user for a food they ate and the calories for their food. The last one, another thing we want to do is we want to display the date and time that the user entered the food. So we're going to come up here and we're going to declare another variable. And that's going to be a date time variable. And we're going to call it food entry. Now a date time variable, as we see here, it represents an instant in time typically expressed as date and time of day. Now this is actually as you see here, it's a struct. So it's a reference variable, and we would instantiate this by doing the new keyword. So we would say new date time, and that would create a new food entry of date time. We're not going to do that now because in this case we don't need to do that. But we've declared food entry, which is a date time variable. And so down here we're going to come and we're going to write this out. We're going to say console, and we're going to write out another line to the console, and we're going to say you've entry made on, and we're going to say food, okay, and we're going to say a plus here because we're going to add another string, food entry dot, and you see the date time gives us a lot of options here. We can add to this, we can add hours, milliseconds. What we want here is you have day of week. We want the date and time at the time the person enters this. So let's say food entry. Okay, gets the date component of this instance. So let's say food entry dot date dot. Okay, so we could use some of these here. It says, you see that these are methods that will convert this to a string. So to long time string, to long date string. Let's just say to string, because date time, this is a conversion, and pretty much more or less every type or variable has this. So if we do to string here, let's put parentheses because it is a method. Okay, so we have a red squiggly line, use of unassigned local variable food entry. So what it's telling us is that we're using food entry, but we've never assigned it an original value. So let's go back up here and let's do that. Let's say datetime food entry equals datetime dot now. if you see here what now says, now gets a system date time object that is set to the current date and time on this computer expressed as local time. So let's do that. So what we've done here is, okay, it doesn't like, okay, so this is not a method. Let's get rid of these squiggly lines here. Okay, so we've declared a date time object. We've called it food entry, and we've instantiated it to the time right now on this machine. So this time will be whenever this application first runs and it declares this object, at that time is what it's going to put here in food entry. And as you see, this red squiggly down here went away. So we have console.writeLine entry made on food entry date.toString. Okay, so let's run this application and let's see what we get. Okay, so the same thing, enter the food you want to record. So let's say banana, let's hit enter. How many calories was that banana? Let's say it's 100 calories, let's hit enter. And then here we have our output. The user entered banana, the calories for your food is 100, and then the entry was made on 7/7/2014 at 12 a.m. Now this time is not right, but for now this will work. So you see our little application, it grabs input and displays output. So I'm gonna hit enter. Now one thing I don't like here is I would like there to be some spaces here so that this isn't, there's a little, I would like a blank space here so that it kind of is easier to read. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I'm gonna enter a space after the last entry, which is 100. I want to have a black space here and the rest of this information. So let me do that. Okay, so after we read in the calories they enter, let's add a space here. Add a space to the console window. So let's say console.writeLine, and we don't have to pass in anything. We just want a blank space. So there's no need for us to put anything here in this method. So now let me run this application and see if this does what I want. Okay, so enter the food you want to record. Let's say pear. Enter the calories. Let's say 150. And as you'll see, that console.writeLine gave us an extra space here, and we have the output for this application. The user entered pear. The calories for your food is 150, and the entry was made on 7/7/2014. So let me hit enter to exit. So this is our basic calorie counter application. As you see, we've declared some variables up here, some strings. We've declared some date time. Down here with the date time, this is what you'd call a conversion. We took a date time object and we've wrote it to string. I actually don't believe I need this date here, so let me modify this here to see if this is going to work. Let's say food entry dot to, okay, so to string right here. So let me get rid of other that other method, and let's run this and see what this gives us. All right, so let's enter the food we want to record. Let's say pear. Let's say it was 150 calories. Okay, now when I do a toString, you'll see that this actually gave me the correct time for the entry. So 7/7/14, and it actually gave me the right time on my machine, which is 4:13 p.m. I actually like this much better. So this conversion is actually better because this will actually give me the better time, the real time, and the date. So here's what we do. This is our conversion of a date time to a string. And this is why we could put it here. Now, if I did not convert this to a string, the compiler is gonna be angry with me. And let's build this up here. Build. Let's build solution. A food entry, and this actually worked, which I'm quite surprised that it worked because it should not be able to take a food entry. So let's run this and let's see what happens. Move this. So enter the food. Let's say plum. Let's say 150 calories. And surprisingly, this actually worked. It actually converted the date time to a string. So I'm gonna hit enter. I guess now the compiler is smart enough to make this change itself. Uh, Bad code, if you should convert your variable. So this is considered bad form or bad code. Um, Apparently, the compiler's smart enough to know that when we use that date time in here in right line, it's smart enough to know to convert it to a string. But as I said, this is considered bad form. You should always convert your variables because you do not know what will happen. So I'm going to put the toString back in here, and that's what we should do. So food entry toString console.readline. So there goes our full application, our calorie counter application. Let me move this back here so we can see this better. Okay, so here goes our full application that asks the user for two inputs, the food and the calories, and it displays what the user's entered. All right, so there we go. So I will place this code on the website, and if you're interested in downloading this code and using it and modifying it potentially, you can do that. Okay, so here goes some more information on the application we just wrote. Um, so what's next in the video series? What are we gonna handle next? I want to look at some GUI components because what I want to do is I want to take this calorie counter application that we just built, and I want to give it a nice graphical interface. I want to give it a form. I want to add some buttons on there, and I want us to be able to add multiple entries. And I want the application to be able to give us a running total and give us some sort of indication of what dates we entered, and then eventually we'll add, I'm going to want the application to record those and save those and show them as I start the application. But for the next step would be, reviewing a graphical user interface or a GUI. We're going to use a form. We're going to populate it with some controls. We're going to modify some properties, and we're going to look at some of the other controls and some of the other things that the Visual Studio offers us. So that's what we're going to do in the next series. Don't forget, if you like the video and you like the series, click the like button. If you really like the series, you can also subscribe. Any comments, suggestions, or ideas, leave them in the comments section in YouTube and I will reply to them. And we will see you in the next series.